Chapter 8. Angels, the Gospel Truth. The repeating days of Noah. Consider the word man. As we have discussed up until this point, our normal perspective is the word man, M-A-N, is the name of our Homo sapien species. After all, it is the name by which God addressed us. Nevertheless, have you noticed as you read the Bible that man is applied more liberally? While we bear the name, God actually really named us Adama. We have discussed that even though Goliath was a giant, meaning part angel and part human, as a Rephaim, according to Genesis 6:4, Goliath was still described as a man. Genesis 32:24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. Isaiah 14:16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Referring to Satan, as they will look upon him on his arrival in hell. Genesis 19:10. But the men put forth their hand, and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut to the door. The men pulled Lot to safety were the holy angels. Please keep this in mind as you read the following verses, Genesis 6:5. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made him. Genesis 6:12. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. Here we have the Hebrew word kal, K-A-L, again in regards to all flesh. Last we saw this word, we were discussing the law that all creation was given in response to Cain killing Abel. In this case, all humans, animals, and possibly plants were affected, for they were all physically corrupt. Obviously, Genesis does not give us details about the people or the world at that time, so we have to use the rest of the Bible to build from. What is underlined is a repeating story of the words ungodly, corrupt, those mingled with the seed of men, those that sought strange flesh, and those whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. When you align the verses of the past with the prophecy of the future, the result is quite amazing. The past. Rather than repeat Genesis 6:2 again, where the Nephilim came down choosing women and having children called Rephaim, let us go back to 2 Peter 2:4. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample unto those after should live ungodly. Luke 17:26-29. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Future. Daniel 2:43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Revelation 17:8. The beast that sawest was, meaning that he had reigned before, and is not. He was cast into the bottomless pit, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go in perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Have you therefore confidence that what happened in the past will happen in the future? Please note the verses referring to the days of Noah, and then also referring to the days of Lot. The same fallen angelic activity regarding strange flesh, with the same judgment from God. Again, destroying the previously mentioned Sethite theory. The sons of God, or Nephilim, had polluted the gene pool of the human race so extensively worldwide with offspring called Rephaim, or giants. Just how many giants were there during Noah's time is unknown. The list of giant tribes that the Bible makes reference to after the flood is quite lengthy, with well over 36 tribes listed. Oftentimes, a name of a giant tribe was simply called a different name from one nation to another. For example, the Bible will say that the Ammonites called the giants, or Rephaim, the Zamzummim. The Moabites called the Rephaim the Amim. The Moabites said the Amims were as tall as the Anakim, which was another giant tribe. Moab is known for the lion man of Moab, coming up later in this discussion of David and his mightiest of men. The Bible mentions them as rather a commonplace occurrence. However, the context will prove it took a mighty feat of strength for one man to subdue and kill them. Deuteronomy 2, verse 10. The Amims dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many, and as tall as the Anakims. Not only were the Amim described as being incredibly tall, some may have had other characteristics, as you will note in the next chapter. The legend of the Amim. Genesis 36:24. And these are the children of Zibeon, both Aha and Anna. That was that Anna who found the mules in the wilderness, as he fed the donkeys of Zibeon, his father. Here is a very ordinary-looking verse, one that looks trivial, causing you to read it and move on. However, maybe the words, "this was that Anna," ought to make you stop for a second look. For this was that Anna that was witnessed something very peculiar that everyone knew about. Further, Moses, the writer of Genesis, God's personal friend, expected you to already have a working knowledge about Anna and his adventure. Obviously, we are way behind. So let's learn about Anna. You can go to church and tell everyone about him. They won't know what to think. That is a guarantee. A mule is a hybrid sterile animal that cannot reproduce. It is a cross between a horse and a donkey. Horses and donkeys do not interbreed in the wild. The hybrid animal has to be initiated by man or a third party. A male horse and a female donkey create a hiney, and a female horse and a male donkey create a mule. Reference www.genetics.thetech.org. Ask. Anna is the one that found the mules in the wilderness, but the animals were actually not mules at all. The only hybrid that men like Anna were familiar with was the term mule, which could be why the word was used. The Hebrew here is He Yemim, or simply Amim. The Bible commentary for the Jews is called the Targum of Onkelos, and is considered most holy. There is also a Samaritan version, www.biblestudiestools.com. Both sources verify the Anna saw terrifying giants in the wilderness who dwelt near the Horim and Seir. It is the book of Jasher that describes these hybrids, or mules. Further, it is the book of Jasher that the Bible is referencing as that Anna. Possibly the author of Genesis did not wish to repeat the story, since it was already written in there, possibly. Religious leaders call the book of Jasher a fake, and it is not biblically inspired. Many people believe the book of Jasher is not fake. They view it somewhat as a historical document that is not biblically inspired or proven. It is certainly not the Word of God, but it is an incredible read. Once you start Jasher, you will find it hard to put the book down, wishing that all of it were true. Book of Jasher 36, verse 29. And whilst he was feeding his father's asses, he led them to the wilderness at different times to feed them. And there was a day that he brought them to one of the deserts on the seashore, opposite the wilderness of the people. And whilst he was feeding them, behold, a very heavy storm came from the other side of the sea, and rested upon the asses that were feeding there, and they all stood still. And afterward, about 120 great and terrible animals came out from the wilderness at the other side of the sea, and they all came to the place where the asses were, and they placed themselves there. And those animals, from their middle downward, were in the shape of the children of men, and from their middle upward, some had the likeness of bears, and some the likeness of kephas, with tails behind them, from between their shoulders, reaching down to the earth, like the tails of the Dutchephath. And the animals came, and mounted, and rode upon these asses, and led them away. And they went away unto this day. And one of these animals approached Anah, and smote him with his tail, and then fled from that place. And when he saw this work, he was exceedingly afraid of his life, and he fled and escaped to the city. And he related to his sons and brothers all that had happened to him. And many went to seek the asses, but could not find them. And Anah and his brothers went no more to that place from that day following, for they were greatly afraid of their lives. The Nephilim and their offspring moved to corrupt the animals, creating what the world's mythological creatures called Yemim. According to the world, these creatures only exist in our minds or superstitions as a way for ancient man to explain the forces of nature, since ancient man lacked education and had no understanding. Further, Bible scholars will reinforce the worldview that telling us that since the Bible is fact and not mythological, these creatures could not exist. Well, the Bible sees things differently. Where in the world does C.S. Lewis derive the character Mr. Tumnus? Mr. Tumnus is a character in Narnia's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When Lucy enters the wardrobe, passing beyond the hanging coats to hide herself near the back of the enclosure, Lucy is surprised when she never reaches the rear wall. She slowly finds herself in a winter wonderland covered in snow. The first creature Lucy meets is Mr. Tumnus, who introduces himself as a faun. A faun has a human form toward the waist up, and the body of a goat toward the waist down. The Bible calls this human-goat hybrid a satyr. Leviticus 17:7. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. To the goat demons, hairy demons, with he-goats, form and feet. Isaiah 13:21. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. Isaiah 34:14. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, the screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. But satyrs never existed. The Bible only meant these things symbolically. Please observe what is described as the skeletal remains of a satyr found near the skeletal remains of a giant horse. Obviously, I don't know if C.S. Lewis ever read the Book of Jasher. However, it is possible one of the characters from Narnia, whose name and character was derived from the tales of Dutchephath, Rippacheep, was his name. He was a swordsman and a soldier, a valiant character with a long, agile tail that he used for balance. Rippacheep can be seen in many scenes as an overly polite, sword-carrying musketeer that was simply a well-animated rat. 2 Samuel 23:20, and Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He was from Ephraim, in the land of Ephraim, in a town called Pirathon. It was the land of the Amalekites. This feat of strength and valor made him one of the 3 of David's mightiest men. There are at least 4 verses in the Bible where the sexual abuse of an animal is punishable by death of the animal and the human for obvious reasons. Leviticus 20:15-16. And if a man lie with a beast, ye shall surely be put to death, and ye shall slay the beast. And if a woman approach unto any beast, and lie down thereunto, thou shalt kill the woman, and the beast, they shall be surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. The legend of Lilith. Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. There is the main scripture for Lilith, that God made man like the animals 2 by 2. So that by the time you get to Genesis 2, Adam is all alone and lonely. Therefore Eve is created not from the ground, but from Adam. There is very little to substantiate the origination or genesis of an entity described in the Holy Bible as Lilith. She is mentioned in the book of Isaiah by name. She is a part of the Jewish folklore and ancient images of her to exist. She is not an angel, but is described as the monster of the dark. And in Isaiah 34:14, the wild beast of the desert shall also meet with the wild beast of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, the screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. That screech owl, in older King James versions, is replaced with the name Lilith. Legend is that she was the first female created side by side with Adam, and she would not step down to a subservient role to Adam. Therefore, Lilith rebelled and flew away on her own journey, morphing into a demonic winged female, ruling the night in the wilderness. The creature of the night, primarily the owls, were her subject. Wisdom came from the serpent in the garden, and there are links to Lilith as the serpent in the garden. Therefore, being wise like an owl has its roots in Lilith. Well, okay, folks, we're going to have to end it there. If you listen closely, I got my choir singing in the background. It's getting late, and there's more to come. We've got more on Lilith. We have more on Noah. There is the topic of women, astrology, spiritualism, Nephilim, and magic. We have the story of Balaam. We have more than I can even grab right at this point in time before we can finish up this chapter. So it's about another half hour. So we're gonna stop and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Comment if you would please, and give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments, questions, nice mail, hate mail, feel free to go ahead and throw it in the comment section. Thank you for bearing with me through these topics of angels, the gospel truth, and have a great night.